Today, we're diving into the fascinating world of Washington quarter dollar coin values, iconic designs, American coin history, hidden treasures, rare varieties, mint marks, unusual colors, silver coins, and coins that collectors and investors carefully search for. Some Washington quarters are common and worth only their face value, while certain key dates, rare varieties, high-grade examples, and genuine mint errors can bring surprisingly strong prices. So before you spend, clean, polish, or throw away an old quarter, take a close look at the date, mint mark, condition, and unusual characteristics. Our first coin is one of the most important Washington quarters ever made, the coin number 1. The 1776 to 1976 Bicentennial Quarter is one of the most recognizable coins in American history. But before you start thinking that every dirty quarter from 1976 is a $1,000,000 treasure, there's an important secret you need to understand. This coin was created to celebrate America's 200th birthday, and millions upon millions were produced, which means most examples found in ordinary pocket change are not rare. But hidden inside this enormous production are special versions, silver issues, high-grade specimens, and genuine mint errors that can become dramatically more valuable. The coin carries a dual date, 1776 to 1976, rather than a normal single year, and its famous reverse shows a colonial drummer holding a drumstick with a torch surrounded by 13 stars. That design was specially created for the bicentennial celebration and became an instant symbol of American history. So when you find one, don't simply look at the date and throw it into a pile of ordinary quarters. Stop, turn it over, examine the mint mark area, inspect the edge, check the condition, and look closely for unusual characteristics, because the difference between an ordinary 25-cent coin and a valuable collector specimen can sometimes be enormous. Now let's talk about the famous 1776 to 1976 quarter with no mint mark, because this is exactly the coin many people discover in old collections, jars, drawers, and pocket change. A missing mint mark on this particular quarter does not automatically mean an error. In 1976, Philadelphia-made bicentennial quarters were intentionally struck without a mint mark, so the blank area next to Washington's portrait is normal. More than 809 million Philadelphia-clad bicentennial quarters were produced, making this variety extremely common in circulated condition. The standard Philadelphia coin is copper-nickel clad, rather than solid silver, and an ordinary worn example is generally worth around face value, sometimes only modestly more depending on condition and the buyer. But here is where the story becomes much more interesting. Condition can completely change the equation. A coin that spent decades circulating in pockets, cash registers, and vending machines can have scratches, dents, discoloration, and while a coin that escaped circulation and remained brilliantly preserved can enter the world of mint state collecting. Some extremely high-grade examples have sold for dramatically more than face value. That means the words "no mint mark" should never be interpreted as automatically rare. The real question is, how rare is your particular condition, and does the coin have a genuine variety or error? And now comes the silver mystery. Many people hear bicentennial quarter and immediately assume it is silver, but the majority of quarters made for circulation were not silver. The special 40% silver bicentennial quarters were produced at the San Francisco Mint and carry an S mint mark. The regular 1976 S silver uncirculated issue had a mintage of about 11 million, while the 1976 S silver proof issue had a mintage of about 4 million. These coins contain 40% silver and 60% copper, and the silver uncirculated version weighs about 5.75 grams. By comparison, the normal clad circulation quarter weighs about 5.67 grams. That difference is tiny, which is why a proper digital scale can be extremely useful when identifying a suspicious specimen. Another clue is the edge. A normal clad quarter often shows a copper-colored stripe, while the 40% silver version has a more uniform silver-colored edge. But don't rely on appearance alone. A coin can be plated, toned, dirty, damaged, or photographed under strange lighting. If you believe you have a silver example, verify it properly rather than trusting a viral claim or a dramatic-looking picture. PCGS lists the 1976 S 40% silver quarter at 5.75 grams, with 11 million minted, and record an auction result of $19,200 for an MS-69 example sold in 2019. That is a genuine example of how a bicentennial quarter can move far beyond its 25-cent face value. But notice the crucial detail. It was an exceptionally high-grade certified coin, not an ordinary dirty quarter found in circulation. Now let's talk about the phrase that makes coin collectors pay attention. Condition, condition, condition. Imagine two bicentennial quarters sitting side by side. One has been carried around for 50 years. Its surface is scratched, its high points worn down, its color dull, and its edge damaged. The other was protected from circulation, has brilliant original luster, sharp details, minimal contact marks, and exceptional eye appeal. They may have been struck from the same year, and even the same mint, but the collector market can treat them very differently. Professional grading services assign grades based on preservation, strike, surfaces, luster, and other characteristics. At the very highest levels, even tiny imperfections can prevent a coin from reaching the next grade. This is why a common coin can become scarce and extraordinary grade. The Philadelphia and Denver bicentennial quarters were produced in enormous quantities, approximately 809.8 million and 860.1 million respectively. So the challenge is not finding a bicentennial quarter. The challenge is finding one that survived in exceptional condition. Some market guides show dramatic price increases for top certified grades, but these figures should never be interpreted as a guaranteed selling price. Auction results, certification, population reports, eye appeal, and current collector demand all matter. But there is another category that can make collectors suddenly stop and look twice: mint errors and die varieties. This is where you need to be extremely careful, because the internet is full of photographs of ordinary doubling, machine doubling, scratches, damage, plating problems, and other abnormalities incorrectly described as million-dollar errors. A genuine mint error is something that happened during the manufacturing process, and serious collectors want evidence that the unusual feature is actually attributable to the mint. Some bicentennial quarters are known with double die varieties and other mint-made errors, and authenticated examples can command substantial premiums. One particularly discussed variety is the 1976 D double die obverse, but not every coin showing what looks like doubling is automatically that variety. You need to examine the lettering, numbers, devices, and shape of the doubling very carefully, preferably with magnification, and compare it against authoritative variety references or obtain professional attribution when the potential value is significant. A scratch across Liberty, a dent near the date, or a flattened letter caused by circulation does not magically turn a quarter into a rare mint error. The most important lesson is simple. Don't confuse damage with rarity. If you think your coin has an extraordinary error, preserve it exactly as you found it and have the feature authenticated before making a major financial decision. Now let's return to the dirty bicentennial quarter, because this is one of the biggest mistakes new collectors make. You find an old 1776 to 1976 quarter covered in dark dirt or discoloration, and you think, this must be an ancient-looking rare coin. Unfortunately, dirt does not create rarity. In fact, cleaning can actually hurt a collectible coin. Scrubbing, polishing, abrasive rubbing, chemical dipping, or attempting to make the coin look shiny can leave permanent hairline scratches or unnatural surfaces. A professional collector generally wants the original surface preserved, not artificially polished. Natural toning can sometimes be attractive, and unusual natural coloration can interest collectors, but artificial coloring, plating, or damage is a completely different story. So if you discover a dirty bicentennial quarter, resist the temptation to attack it with household chemicals or a polishing cloth. First, identify the mint mark. Examine the edge, check the weight if possible, inspect the design under magnification, and document its condition with photographs. If the coin appears potentially valuable, preservation is far more important than making it look shiny. Remember this powerful rule. A dirty coin can still be collectible, but a damaged coin may never recover its original surfaces. The history behind a coin is just as fascinating as the potential value. America was preparing to celebrate the 200th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, and the U.S. Mint created special circulating designs for the quarter, half dollar, and dollar. The bicentennial quarter replaced the familiar eagle reverse with a famous colonial drummer design. John Flanagan Washington portrait remained on the obverse, while the reverse design by Jack L. H.R. became one of the most memorable reverses in modern American coinage. The dual date 1776 to 1976 was used on quarters struck during both 1975 and 1976, which is why you can encounter a bicentennial quarter carrying the same dual date, even though it was physically produced before 1976. This was not a mistake. It was part of the commemorative design. The enormous number of coins produced reflects the importance of the celebration. Philadelphia and Denver produced huge quantities of clad quarters for circulation, while San Francisco produced collector versions, including both clad proofs and 40% silver issues. In other words, this isn't just another old quarter. It is a physical piece of America's bicentennial celebration, and that historical connection is one reason collectors continue to pursue exceptional examples decades later. So what should you do if you actually have a 1776 to 1976 quarter with no mint mark sitting in your collection right now? First, don't panic, and don't assume you're holding a fortune. Place the coin under good lighting and examine both sides. Look at Washington's portrait and the area where the mint mark would normally appear on later Philadelphia quarters. Then examine the drum reverse for unusual doubling, missing details, cracks, die breaks, or other features that appear to be part of the strike rather than damage. Check the edge for the copper-colored clad layer. If you have a precise digital scale, weigh it without altering the coin. A normal clad piece is around 5.67 grams, while 40% silver bicentennial quarter is around 5.75 grams. If your coin has an S mint mark, pay particular attention because San Francisco produced both clad and silver versions. So the S alone doesn't prove silver. If the coin is unusually pristine, don't clean it. Place it in a proper inert holder, and consider professional grading if the potential value justifies the cost. The most dangerous mistake is believing an exaggerated online headline that says every bicentennial quarter is worth thousands or millions. The truth is much more exciting. Most are ordinary, but a small number of exceptional coins can be genuinely valuable. And now we reach the biggest question. Can a 1776 to 1976 bicentennial quarter make you a millionaire overnight? The honest answer is that you should not expect that from an ordinary circulated quarter. Claims that a normal dirty, no mint mark bicentennial quarter is automatically worth millions are misleading. The documented $19,200 auction result for a 1976 S40% silver quarter was for an extraordinary specimen, showing that the right combination of rarity, condition, certification, and demand can produce a spectacular result. But it does not mean every 1976 quarter has that value. Most circulated Philadelphia and Denver examples remain close to face value, while special silver issues, proofs, genuine errors, and extremely high-grade specimens can command premiums. The real treasure hunt is therefore not about believing every unbelievable price tag. It's about learning how to separate an ordinary coin from a truly exceptional one. If you have one, don't spend it blindly and don't sell it based on a random social media claim either. Identify it first. Study it. Weigh it. Examine it. Preserve it. And if the coin number 2, the 1977 D. Washington quarter looks like an ordinary piece of American pocket change, but this Denver minted quarter has a story that can become extremely interesting when you start examining its condition, minting characteristics, and possible errors. The D beneath Washington's portrait tells you that the coin was struck at the Denver Mint, and the regular 1977 D quarter was made from copper-nickel-clad metal, not silver. Its standard weight is about 5.67 grams, and more than 256 million were struck. So an ordinary circulated example is not $1 million coin and should not be advertised as one. But here is where the treasure hunt begins. Rarity in modern U.S. coins is often created not simply by the year, but by an unusual mint error, an extraordinary grade, or a rare wrong planchet situation. PCGS identifies the 1977 D as a common date overall, while noting that examples in exceptionally high grades become much harder to find. One documented PCGS auction record for a 1977 D reached $460 for an MS-67 example in 2023. That is the kind of detail that makes this coin worth examining without creating false promises about overnight wealth. Now look carefully at the coin you have in your hand. The first thing you want to identify is that D mint mark. On a 1977, D. Washington Quarter. The mint mark is located on the obverse, below Washington's neck area. If the coin is heavily circulated, scratched, stained, or dirty, the details may be difficult to see, but don't immediately assume that a damaged appearance means a coin is rare. Dirt, discoloration, scratches, dents, and corrosion happen after a coin leave the mint, and those problems generally do not create a valuable mint error. In fact, aggressive cleaning can make a potentially collectible coin less desirable because collectors value original surfaces. If your 1977 D quarter is dirty, resist the temptation to polish it until it shines. Don't use abrasive materials, household cleaners, or rough cloths. Instead, preserve the coin exactly as you found it and examine it carefully under good lighting. A dirty quarter can still contain an important clue, but the dirt itself isn't the treasure. The treasure is whatever lies underneath it. An unusual strike, exceptional preservation, or an authentic mint-made error. Here is the first shocking fact. 1977. D quarters were not silver quarters. The standard coin is copper-nickel clad, with a copper center. PCGS lists the composition as 75% copper and 25% nickel over a pure copper core, with standard weight of 5.67 grams. That means if someone tells you that every 1977 D quarter is secretly a silver quarter worth thousands because it is old, don't believe that claim without evidence. The silver Washington quarter era had already ended for normal circulation coins before 1977. However, this is exactly where collectors become interested in unusual minting mistakes. If a 1977 D quarter was accidentally struck on a planchet intended for another coin, especially a silver-clad planchet, the story becomes completely different. A wrong planchet coin is not valuable merely because it looks silver. It needs to be authenticated because color, lighting, chemical treatment, plating, and environmental damage can all create misleading appearances. The best evidence comes from the coin's weight, composition, dimensions, edge appearance, and professional authentication. Now imagine discovering a 1977 D quarter that looks slightly different from every other quarter in your collection. Perhaps the edge doesn't show the familiar copper-colored center line. Perhaps the weight is unusual. Perhaps the coin has a strange gray appearance. Your heart starts beating faster because you wonder whether you found a wrong planchet error. This is one of the most exciting possibilities in error coin collecting. A coin is supposed to be struck on the correct metal blank or planchet for its denomination. If the wrong planchet accidentally enters the press and receives a quarter design, the result can become a major collectible. Some published reports describe 1977 D quarters attributed to unusual planchets, including a reported example struck on a 40% silver-clad planchet. Such a coin would be dramatically different from an ordinary 1977 D quarter. But don't confuse a reported error with a guarantee that every silver-colored 1977 D is valuable. The coin must be examined and authenticated, especially when a claimed value reaches hundreds or thousands of dollars. Another area that deserves your attention is the off-center strike. Imagine the quarter being struck while the blank was not positioned correctly in the press. Instead of Washington's portrait being perfectly centered, part of the design can be shifted toward one side, leaving an obvious blank crescent of metal on the opposite side. The more dramatic the genuine off-center strike, the more interesting it can become to collectors, especially when the date and mint mark remain clearly visible. This is very different from a normal coin that simply has a scratch or dent near the rim. A true mint-made off-center strike changes the position of the design itself. Some published market estimates for major 1977 quarter off-center errors reach several $100s, but actual prices depend heavily on the degree of displacement, visibility of the date, condition, authentication, and collector demand. So if your 1977 D quarter appears dramatically shifted, don't throw it back into your change jar. Put it somewhere safe and investigate it before deciding what you have. Then there's a broad strike error, another fascinating minting mistake. Under normal circumstances, the collar surrounding the planchet helps control the coin's final shape and diameter during striking. If the collar isn't functioning properly, the metal can spread outward, producing a coin that looks unusually broad or expanded. A genuine broad strike can have a very distinctive appearance, especially around the rim. But once again, the word error should be used carefully. A coin can become misshapen after leaving the mint because somebody squeezed it, hit it, bent it, or otherwise damaged it. Post-mint damage is not the same thing as a mint error. Collectors and professional grading services look for physical evidence showing that the unusual feature occurred during production. That's why a strange-looking coin should not automatically be called rare. The most exciting discoveries are the ones where the evidence supports the story. Now, let's talk about condition, because this is where a common 1977 D quarter can become surprisingly interesting. PCGS describes a 1977 D as common in most circulated and lower uncirculated grades, but the situation changes at the very highest levels. PCGS notes that MS66 is somewhat scarce, while MS67 examples are much less common, and coins above MS67 become particularly challenging. This means that your old quarter doesn't need to have a dramatic error to deserve attention. If it somehow survived for nearly 50 years with blazing original luster, extremely sharp details, minimal contact marks, and exceptional surfaces, it could be much more valuable than an ordinary circulated example. Current price guides also show a steep difference between ordinary examples and very high-grade certified pieces. One PCGS price guide listing shows substantially higher values at MS66, MS67, and MS68 than at lower grades. But remember that a guide is not a guaranteed cash offer. Actual selling prices depend on certification, buyer demand, auction competition, and the precise quality of the individual coin. Here is something extremely important for anyone searching for a 1977 D double die. Not every coin that looks doubled is a double die variety. Mechanical doubling, die deterioration, scratches flatten letters, and damage can create shapes that look like doubled letters or numbers. If you see unusual doubling around Liberty, in God we trust, or the date, examine the shapes carefully under magnification. A genuine double die is created during the die-making process and produces specific characteristics that can be distinguished from simple damage or machine doubling. Some online sources discuss minor 1977 doubling claims, but because the 1977 D is not generally considered a famous major double die date, you should be especially cautious about sensational claims. If the doubling is dramatic and clearly part of the original design, professional attribution becomes worthwhile. Never pay thousands of dollars for a coin simply because a seller has typed rare double die into an online listing. And now comes the part that every treasure hunter wants to hear. What can 1977 D Washington Quarter actually be worth? The honest answer depends on what kind of 1977 D you have. An ordinary circulated quarter is generally around face value. Because hundreds of millions were produced and the coin is common, a normal uncirculated example can bring a modest premium, while an exceptionally high-grade certified specimen can bring much more. PCGS records a $460 auction result for an MS67 example, while its price guide shows substantially higher guide values for some top grades. Genuine dramatic errors can be worth more still, with published reports describing examples of wrong planchet and major off-center errors reaching into hundreds or thousands depending on the specific error and authentication. But a claim that an ordinary dirty 1977 D quarter is automatically worth $1 million, or that it will make you a billionaire overnight, is not supported by the documented evidence. The real excitement comes from discovering the exceptional coin hiding among the ordinary ones. So before you spend your 1977 D Washington Quarter for just 25 cents, take one final look. Check the D mint mark. Inspect Washington's portrait. Study the date. Examine the reverse. Look at the rim and inspect the edge. If you have a precise scale, compare its weight with a standard 5.67 gram specification. Look for dramatic off-center striking, unusual planchet characteristics, genuine doubling, broad striking, clipping, or other evidence that appears to have happened at the mint rather than after the coin entered circulation. Most importantly, don't clean the coin. If something truly unusual appears, preserve it and seek professional authentication before making a sale. The 1977 D Washington Quarter is a perfect example of why coin collecting is so fascinating. Millions of ordinary coins can exist, yet a tiny number can become special because of condition or an extraordinary minting mistake. You may not be holding a guaranteed fortune, but you could be holding a piece of American minting history. that deserves a much closer look. And that is the real lesson of the 1977 D Quarter. Don't judge a coin by its age, its dirt, or its appearance alone. Learn what happened to that individual coin before deciding what it is worth. Coin number 3. The 1979 D Washington Quarter may look like nothing more than an ordinary 25-cent piece, but if you have one in your hand right now, don't put it back into your pocket just yet. Look closely at that tiny D Mint mark beneath Washington's neck, because this coin was struck at the Denver Mint during an era when hundreds of millions of Washington quarters were being produced for everyday American commerce. The 1979 D had a mintage of 489,789,780 pieces, making the normal issue common rather than automatically rare. It is a copper-nickel-clad quarter, weighing approximately 5.67 grams, with a diameter of 24.30 millimeters. But here is where the story becomes exciting. While the ordinary 1979 D is common, exceptionally preserved examples and genuine mint errors can be worth dramatically more than face value. PCGS records an auction result of $1,078 for a 1979 D graded MS-67, proving that a coin originally worth 25 cents can command a serious premium when it reaches an extraordinary certified grade. Now imagine finding this coin inside an old jar, a forgotten collection, a drawer, or even ordinary pocket change. Maybe the surface is dark, dirty, or covered with years of grime. Your first reaction might be that the coin is worthless because it doesn't look beautiful. But experienced collectors know that appearance alone does not tell the whole story. A dirty coin can hide important details, while an apparently shiny coin can actually be damaged by cleaning. The most important thing is to preserve the original surface. Do not scrub a quarter with a toothbrush, polish it with metal cleaner, or rub it aggressively with a cloth. Cleaning can leave permanent hairlines and reduce collector appeal. Instead, examine it under strong natural or neutral light and use magnification if necessary. Look carefully at the date, Washington's portrait, the lettering, the rim, and especially the mint mark. The question isn't simply, is this quarter old? The question is, what happened to this particular quarter before it reached my hands? And now comes one of the biggest misunderstandings surrounding the 1979 D Washington Quarter, silver. The normal 1979 D Quarter is not a silver quarter. It is made from copper-nickel-clad material over a copper core. PCGS lists its composition as 75% copper and 25% nickel over a pure copper center, with a standard weight of 5.67 grams. So if somebody tells you that every 1979 D quarter is secretly a silver coin because it looks gray or because it is nearly 50 years old, that claim should immediately raise a red flag. However, a completely different situation could occur if a quarter were accidentally struck on the wrong planchet. That kind of genuine mint error can be fascinating because the coin may have the Washington quarter design, but the wrong metal, weight, or dimensions. A silver-looking appearance by itself is not enough. The coin needs to be tested and, when the potential value is significant, authenticated by a professional grading service. This brings us to one of the most exciting possibilities, the wrong planchet error. During the coin-making process, blanks intended for different denominations are supposed to remain separated. If the wrong blank somehow enters a quarter press and receives the Washington quarter design, the result could become a genuine mint error. A 1979 quarter struck on a Jefferson nickel planchet, for example, would have an unusual size and weight because a nickel blank is smaller and lighter than a quarter blank. The design may also be incomplete near the edges because the planchet isn't large enough to receive the full quarter design. Published reports document 1979 quarters struck on incorrect planchets, including an example reported as selling for about $184 in XF condition. That doesn't make every unusual-looking 1979 D valuable, but it shows why weight, diameter, edge appearance, and physical characteristics matter when investigating a suspected error. Now turn your attention to the mint mark itself. The small d can be one of the most interesting areas of the coin. A normal 1979 D has a clearly formed Denver mint mark, but collectors also encounter examples where the mint mark looks filled, distorted, weak, or unusual. One reported variety is a filled D appearance, associated with grease filling the die cavity and producing a blobby or partially closed-looking mint mark. However, this is exactly where you need to slow down. A damaged mint mark, dirt lodged inside the letter, corrosion, or ordinary work can produce a similar appearance. You should never assume that every strange-looking D is a valuable error. The strongest discoveries are those where the unusual feature can be identified as a genuine mint-produced characteristic rather than something that happened after the coin left the mint. Recent published market reports describe authenticated filled D examples selling for hundreds of dollars in higher grades, but those prices apply to specific certified pieces. Not to every 1979 D quarter with a slightly unusual-looking mint mark. Then comes a question every treasure hunter asks. Can a normal 1979 D quarter become valuable because of condition? Absolutely, but the coin has to be exceptional. Because nearly 490 million were struck, the ordinary circulated 1979 D is plentiful. PCGS classifies a regular issue as R 1.0, meaning it is common overall. But condition rarity is a completely different story. A quarter that spent decades being carried in pockets will normally have contact marks, scratches, dull surfaces, and wear. A coin that somehow escaped circulation can remain brilliant and sharply detailed. At the highest mint state grades, the number of surviving examples becomes much smaller. PCGS's auction record of $1,078 for an MS-67 specimen demonstrates exactly how a common date quarter can become valuable when it reaches an elite grade. In other words, the date alone isn't creating the value. The combination of date, mint, preservation, certification, and collector demand is what matters. Think about what happens when two 1979 D quarters are placed side by side. The first has been circulating for decades. Washington's cheek has contact marks. The field are scratched, the rim has small dents, and the original luster has disappeared. The second looks almost as though it left the mint yesterday. Its surfaces are clean and reflective. The lettering is sharp, the design details are strong, and there are very few marks. Both coins have the same date and mint mark, but collectors may value them very differently. That's why you should never judge a coin simply by its age. A coin doesn't become rare merely because it is approaching 50 years old. What matters is how many examples survive in a particular condition, and whether your individual coin possesses something unusual. PCGS's data shows that the 1979 D is common overall, but that the finest grades become increasingly difficult. That is where the real opportunity for collectors begins. Now let's talk about dramatic errors, because this is where the word rare can actually become meaningful. Imagine that the design is visibly shifted away from the center, leaving a large crescent of blank metal on one side. That could indicate an off-center strike. Imagine the coin has an unusual broad shape because the collar failed during striking. Or imagine one side has a missing portion of the outer clad layer, exposed in the copper-colored core. These are very different from scratches or damage that occurred after the coin left the mint. A genuine mint error can carry a premium depending on its type, severity, condition, and collector demand. But don't let an exciting photograph convince you that every damaged quarter is a mint error. A coin bent in a machine, struck against another object, chemically altered, or deliberately damaged after leaving the mint is not equivalent to a genuine production error. The key is evidence. The more valuable the claimed error, the more important professional authentication becomes. So what about the sensational claims that a 1979 D Washington quarter could be worth millions of dollars and make you a billionaire overnight? This is where we need to separate excitement from reality. There is no reliable evidence that an ordinary circulated 1979 D quarter is worth millions. The documented market tells a much more interesting and believable story. The regular issue was produced in enormous numbers, while exceptional certified coins and major errors can bring substantially higher prices. PCGS records a $1,078 sale for an MS-67 1979 D, and published reports document additional premiums for specific errors. These are real examples of value, but they are nowhere near a guaranteed $1 million or billion-dollar fortune. If you want your YouTube audience to trust your channel, this distinction is extremely important. Don't tell viewers that every 1979 D is a jackpot. Tell them what to look for that could separate an ordinary quarter from an extraordinary one. That is where the real excitement is. Finally, if you have a 1979 D. Washington quarter, don't spend it until you examine it properly. Check the tiny D mint mark. Look for unusual doubling or distorted mint mark. Examine the rim for evidence of an off-center strike or other striking abnormality. Study the edge for anything unusual. If you have an accurate digital scale, compare the coin's weight with a normal approximately 5.67 grams. If it looks suspiciously different in size, weight, or composition, don't clean it and don't alter it. Put it safely aside and seek professional evaluation. Most 1979 D quarters will not make you rich, and that's perfectly normal. But a spectacular error or an exceptionally high-grade example could be worth far more than the original 25-cent face value. The documented MS-67 auction result proves that the right coin can surprise you. So the next time you see a dirty old 1979 D quarter, remember this. The dirt isn't the treasure, the age isn't the treasure, and the date alone isn't the treasure. The real treasure is the unusual detail that can be proven to make your individual coin different.